To the Grand and Imperial Wizard of the Invisible Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, Mr. Bill Wilkinson. Oh, Imperial Wizard, can you tell me, and us, 100 years after your predecessors set the South aflame with the cross burnings, lynchings, and other events, you should be bothering this country still?
This is Levittown, Pennsylvania, a new suburban community of 60,000 people midway between Philadelphia and Trenton, New Jersey. With its giant shopping center, winding lanes named for flowers and trees, it is fairly typical of communities all over America, where families are pursuing the American dream to give their children a better chance in life. Levittowners are people of modest means. Nearly all are young people. A large proportion are veterans. In almost all respects, the Myers family is close to the Levittown norm. They have 3 small children, the youngest only 1 month old. Myers served for 2.5 years in the Army and was discharged as a staff sergeant. He works as a laboratory technician and is studying for a degree as an electrical engineer. His wife, Daisy, is a college graduate. The Myers home is modestly furnished, and their late model family car was bought on time. They are very close to the Levittown norm, except in one respect. William Myers, Jr. and his family are Negroes in an all-white community.
This week, in schools all over America, voters chose the next president of the United States. In New York, it was the first time the schools have been open since 60,000 teachers went on strike nearly a month ago. Compared to the choosing of a president, the teachers' strike seems a local difficulty. But at stake in the strike are the important issues that Americans were voting about this week. The issues of violence and order, of poverty and wealth, and of racial strife between black and white.
Most Levittowners are proud and happy in their new environment. For many, it is the first house of their own, and it represents a major financial investment.
Just half an hour away from Richard Nixon's home is the district of Ocean Hill, Brownsville. This is black man's territory, where white New Yorkers fear to walk. Jewish immigrants to America settled here, but in the past 10 years, the whites have fled to the suburbs as Negroes poured into the city.
To begin with, I believe a slight rebuttal is in order for your opening statements, or the opening statements that was made about the Klan. We are not anti-Catholic. We are not anti-Semitic. We believe in the white race. We believe that at this point in time that white Americans are being treated as second-class citizens, that the federal laws, the civil rights laws, have created a dual system of justice in this country.
Ocean Hill, Brownsville is now a black ghetto, a surprising choice for an educational experiment that has led to a teacher's strike and the threat of racial violence.
Social life is mainly confined to visits with the neighbors. Occasionally there are community-wide events, but it's too early yet for most residents to become identified with the broader aspects of community living.
A set of federal laws that protects the interest of minorities and local and state laws.
But Grand and Imperial Wizard,
the
if I
interest
may.
of white people.
The Ocean Hill Brownsville experiment started when the city gave the local black school board the chance to run 8 schools themselves. The black board fired 10 white teachers because the teachers were out of sympathy with the experiment.
Levittown reacted in a number of ways to the new arrivals. There were several hundred who congregated on the street in front of the Myers house, and there were those among them who felt strongly enough to throw a rock through the picture window. But there was another large group who were repelled by this kind of behavior and organized to help Levittown accept its first Negro neighbors.
We are a
Well,
Christian.
what do you mean you're not anti-Semitic?
We are a Christian organization. We also don't allow Buddhists or Muslims or atheists in the organization.
Levittown was built by one man for whom it is named. Like many community developers, he set the initial policy and provided a minimum of essential services.
The teachers went on strike and are still out. Only Ocean Hill Brownsville schools, the cause of all the trouble, stayed open and recruited staff to run them.
The school board leaders are convinced that only black local control can improve schools like Coleman Junior High, the worst in the area.
Social worker Walter Lynch. What sort of, I mean, was this a blackboard jungle school? I mean, what
This
sort
was
of...
a blackboard jungle school. You can see this yard last spring rather. At the end of the day, most of the workers, instead of cleaning inside the building, were picking up furniture thrown out of the windows back in front. Paints, which you can still see on the walls that were coming from inside of the building outside. 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, the yard was filled with youngsters playing. You know, they were just on their own. They walked in and out of school. Many of them told us they came to school for the hot lunch and then they left right after.
In August 1957, Levittown, Pennsylvania attracted international attention when violence erupted as William Myers, Jr. and his family moved into the 3-bedroom house at Daffodil and Deep Green Lanes. In almost all respects, the Myers family is close to the Levittown norm. They have 3 small children, the youngest only 1 month old. Myers served for 2.5 years in the Army and was discharged as a staff sergeant. He works as a laboratory technician and is studying for a degree as an electrical engineer. His wife, Daisy, is a college graduate. The Myers home is modestly furnished, and their late model family car was bought on time. They are very close to the Levittown norm, except in one respect. William Myers, Jr. and his family are Negroes in an all-white community.
There was no control whatsoever.
Was there violence?
There was many cases of violence in the schools. We had, in the month of April, we had 28 fires in 28 different classrooms. Fortunately, no one was ever injured by a fire, but we had many fights among students. At one time, there was a Puerto Rican and black war going on in and out of the building, and the Puerto Rican parents came in to take their children out of the school.
You were anti-Catholic.
The Klan has had different views from time to time on lesser issues. The one issue we've never changed on is that of segregation. We believe that God has commanded us to separate ourselves from other races.
We lost what few white children we had. It was utter chaos, and the parents, recognizing this, met with the administration, and the administration said new teachers, new supervisors.
But in the stores and at the schools and on the front lawns, Levittowners discussed the Myers.
Well, I first read a small article in the newspaper that the first colored family had moved into this community. And following that, why I began to hear on the radio and read in the newspaper that there was some disturbance around this home that these people had bought.
What was your initial reaction?
I was terribly shocked to find that there were people in this community who would be so violently opposed to it.
The main attack of the Teachers' Union pickets has been directed against Coleman High School, which had originally fired the 10 teachers. The union is nearly all white and 70% Jewish. They say the black school board is anti-white and anti-Jewish and must be removed. As the strike goes on, racial fears grow.
Do you think that there's been a sort of attempt at a black takeover, a sort of black power movement here?
I think what you've got here basically is an attempt to turn back the hands of time in this respect. 1954, the Supreme Court ruled that segregation as such was no longer the law of the land. Now all of a sudden what they want us to do is to practice segregation.
Well, black segregation.
Right. But
in fact, that's not a unique stand. Billy Graham, just a few years ago himself, segregated his crusade audiences. He preached segregation. The Southern Baptist and the National Baptist, one was black, one was white. They practiced and preached segregation. So we didn't invent segregation. We just still believe in it.
There are only black people living in the area. They can't really get white people into the school, can they?
yes, but you asked, is it part of a movement? When, for example, the Black Panthers go into Brooklyn Supreme Court and file papers to have the police put under community control, what's the next logical step? You will want the fire department put under community control, sanitation under community control, the post office under community control. And what are we going to have here? We'll have South Africa and Rhodesia here.
I rather thought that everyone would just accept it as I would.
Was the community prepared in any way for the entrance of the first Negro family into all-white Levittown?
Well, there was an attempt by a group of ministers who formed a group called the Human Relations Council, and they were just getting started on their work. I don't know how they expected to ultimately accomplish the purpose of educating everyone, but I know that they had an open forum one time, and just within the last 3 or 4 months, and the results of it were published in the paper.
Do you feel it was effective?
No, I'm afraid it was just a drop in the bucket. Not very many people even read or were aware of the article or of the meeting that preceded it.
I believe, to make it clear at first, we're the only national Klan organization left. There have been those that have come and gone. It's sort of like the political parties, the Democrats, Republicans, American independents. They come and they go. They splinter and they regroup and rejoin. Right now, we are the major unquestioned Klan organization in America. There are some people that we have expelled from our organization that will start other branches. In their anxiety to get membership and support, they will join with anyone, including Nazis.
Now, the same people who are against South Africa and Rhodesia want those institutions brought here. To me, that's illogical.
Oh, I heard lots of rumors. I was busy telling people not to believe them.
What kind?
Well, that they had been sponsored. Chiefly, I think people resented, after they heard this rumor and believed it, they resented feeling that some outside group had deliberately moved these people in, that they were sponsored and paid by an outside group to do this very thing. And I had been told on good authority that that wasn't true at all, and so I told people that it wasn't true.
The strikers may fear black power, but white teachers in Coleman High School who are strike-breaking certainly do not. They're often young and inexperienced, but idealistic about raising standards in the ghetto schools, where 14-year-old Negroes read like 8-year-olds.
You were denouncing the quote, I think it was Jew-controlled media. Have you used that term?
I may have used that term.
It's a direct quote.
I may have used that term some years ago.
Well, what do you mean by that?
But well, I don't mean by that anything at this point in time. I believe that a lot of Jews are prominent in the media, but I believe that a lot of Baptists and a lot of Methodists and a lot of other people are.
Why would you use the term?
The young teachers recruited by the local board say the staff who were fired were uninterested in teaching ghetto children. The strikers say the school's in chaos, which is obviously untrue. But even some black parents are keeping their children away for fear of violence.
But for others, the Myers moving into Levittown constitutes an infringement of their own liberties. And under the impact of this situation, they react with anger and force.
Jew-controlled media, you know.
Well,
I mean, you don't run around saying the Baptist-controlled media is keeping us off the air.
I no longer use that term. This has been a number of years ago that I would have made that comment, and I'm not apologizing for what I might have said at that time.
The whole school is now a symbol of black power for the striking teachers, while the local board see it as the only hope for improving black people's education.
Why did you select Levittown to live?
We were looking for a place to buy a home. We looked at Levittown, and we liked the homes here. We liked the advantages that Levittown seemed to offer in comparison to other cities. And we understood that it was going to be all white, and we were very happy to buy a home here.
The teachers who continue to work in the school have been savagely criticized by the strikers.
How about your children? Have you talked with them about the Myers?
We have tried to keep the discussions away from the children. I feel that it's something that we adults should solve without bringing the children into it any more than we have to. We're doing it for the children, but I don't feel that they are old enough to understand the problem as it is.
Do you think a Negro family moving here will affect the community as a whole?
Definitely.
In what way?
I think that, well, the property values will immediately go down if they are allowed to move in here in any number.
Can you give a basis for that judgment?
Yes, we used to live in Washington, D.C., and we saw a very good example of that there.
Well, they're sure that we're doing everything wrong, that we have a lot of people here who don't know how to teach, that we have a lot of radicals here, that the school is in complete chaos, that we're teaching black racism, and they see Rhodey McCoy as a militant black racist governing board people as wild cannibals with spears, running around threatening white people. They have this great fear of black people, which is completely unfounded.
Is there to be no escape from living near Negroes? And what of the dream of middle-class respectability? If a Negro family can afford what you can afford, how do you justify your feeling of superiority?
Talk about blacks.
All right.
Why you
you
running
went
around?
up, and that of the bodies that he took out as a medical officer, he said, you know, 50% of those guys were black kids, served in the United States and Vietnam. This was a, you know, it was a crack frontline unit, and these were American blacks who died in higher numbers for their country in Southeast Asia in that war than did white Americans, as a matter of fact, in the Vietnam War. Now, how can you be against a race which contains people who are out there fighting for their country just as much as white, Christian, Protestant Americans are?
That's something else that needs to be cleared up, Pat. We're not against the black race. We're not against, we believe in free enterprise for this country. We believe that everyone should have the same rights.
The illogic of one's own position becomes apparent, and in self-justification the old tribal myths are invoked. What other objections, aside from the effect on property values, do you have against the Myers?
The whole thing centers around the word integration. Well, as Mr. Myers said, because his home has been anything but peaceful since he moved in. He's got 3 children, and evidently he feels that they will be accepted socially. And I don't feel that they ever will be.
You have to understand something about the racial situation here in this country, that white people fear black people a great deal.
But the whole trouble with this integration business is that in the end, it probably will end up with mixing socially.
And teachers, especially new teachers, who are unsure of how to teach to begin with, even if they were in the best of schools, under the best of conditions, they would be confused. They would know quite what they were doing. They come here and they see a class full of black children who are having a hard time learning because they've missed so much.
And you will have, well, I think their aim is mixed marriages and becoming equal with the whites. But the only way they're going to do that is by education and by bettering themselves, not by pushing in the way they have here.
But it says right here, you believe in the final solution, which is black repatriation to Africa. Now,
Abraham Lincoln, but now look, I'm not going to be cut off in the middle.
No, but I'm not going to be shut off either. You're running around on a bed sheet. I don't.
Do you intend to move?
At the time, no. It's a pretty impossible situation. We have our home here, and if the colored move in and run real estate values down, there are a lot of us, the GIs particularly, who are going to be more or less stuck with their homes.
I answered your question. Now I want to finish what I was saying. We feel that affirmative action is discriminating against white people, and there is no question about it. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Because black people were hurt and discriminated against in the past does not justify the discrimination against white people now.
But there are others who are for the Myers?
Yes, I've read about them.
For what reason, do you think, do they support the Myers?
Frankly, I don't know what reasons they can have for it. If they are homeowners in Levittown, I don't see what reasons they can have for it.
And so their behavior problems. Teachers are frightened. They're afraid. If a kid says to them, watch it, don't say that to me, I'll get you after school, they cower in front of the kid instead of grabbing that kid by the collar and hauling him down to the principal's office.
Do you think Myers will be able to live here comfortably?
Comfortably? No.
It's as simple as that. You have to be tough. You have to be firm. The psychology that you learn in college, you can throw out the window. It's useless here.
What course of action are you going to follow?
I'll do what I can to help.
It's a matter of being perfectly clear and firm, but fair.
To get them out legally and peacefully. And as far as accepting them socially, if that's what you mean, I could never do that.
I'm a segregationist, okay? I believe that God has commanded me not to mix with other races. For that reason, I want to have schools where I can send my children to a white school. I want to be able to go to my white neighborhoods, to white businesses,
All right.
for those things. So if that terms
can
me as
do
a
that.
racist, then I'm a racist.
Last year, I think about the teachers. A lot of the teachers had hand trouble.
Hand trouble?
Yeah.
What's hand trouble?
I mean, you know, they used to take the kids and hit them, punch them around. But see, the teacher that I was had for sharp, he used to do it to us. Take us, punch us all over the class.
Was that because you were fairly wild and he had to do that, or?
He didn't have to, because he ain't had no, you know, they not supposed to be punching on people.
Has this affected your relationship with neighbors?
No, we've discussed it freely. We found people for and against, but we've tried to keep it being discussed. That was the important thing.
There's no reason why in this great land of ours we couldn't have a three-tiered school system, a black school and a white school and an integrated school, and give everyone their choice. We would have much less dissension, we would have much less racial problems in the schools, and if those people that are seeking to integrate the races in this country really were seeking to do the best for both races, they would adopt this system and let integration proceed gradually.
I was working and I was teaching a class. I wouldn't sit down there and tell the kids every single day, I get paid whether you learn or not. I would try to make them understand that they must, you know, get down to business and stop all this playing around.
Have you heard any rumors?
Many. I won't repeat them because I don't like to repeat rumors.
Tell me,
I believe in God. Is that wrong?
do you deny that you said this, that this is the literature you're handing out to schools, to school children in America? I just quoted this from your own pamphlet. Are you fed up, it says here, with blacks following you home, trying to beat you up?
And when June and May came, that's when everything started happening at this school. When Martin Luther King died, a lot happened here. Then from on.
What effect did Martin Luther King
Hey, you should have been in this school when that happened.
What happened?
They ran off that it's hard to tell you what happened because, like they say, almost, you don't say, kids ran out the classroom, the teachers just stood there and looked at them.
Don't you be running out there. What's the matter? You come back in this classroom. And Miss Papa.
What were the kids running out the classroom for?
They wanted static.
They wanted to...
They wanted to fight.
Who they wanted to fight?
Anybody that they could fight.
This was after Martin Luther King's death?
That was the day that Martin Luther King started. They had a riot in the auditorium, they had a riot in the lunchroom. Kids just got excited and started fighting. The teachers, all they did is got their coats and went on home.
Do you think rumors contributed to the reaction of those opposing the Myers?
Surely they did, but we had some very interested citizens here who pledged themselves to a fact-finding group, and they tried to dissolve those rumors as quickly as they were started by fact.
Beaten. I don't know what we're doing in 1982 talking to you.
Well, that's your problem, Tom. But let me tell you one thing. I'm not beaten, the Klan is not beaten, and the white race is not beaten. No more than the Democrats is beating or the Republicans is beaten. They're all fighting for the things that they believe in, and we believe in something.
All right, what
and
do you believe in?
Earnestly through the law.
Do you think the Myers will be able to live comfortably in Levittown?
I think so. I hope so. I think the majority of people here will grow accustomed to it and realize that, they can be good neighbors, which I'm sure they are. And I think the majority of people here are not the violent, violent group that we have heard so much about.
Do you think that you've lost out a lot of time over this
We
trouble?
lost out a lot of time last year because they didn't teach us nothing. They let the kids do what they wanted to do. And when the kids didn't want to learn, they didn't do nothing. The teachers stood up there and said, I got my education, you get yours when you get ready. And they just sit up there and read the paper and whatnot.
We believe in God, we believe in the United States of America, and we believe that God has commanded us to separate ourselves from other races. Not because we hate the other races or because we feel that we're better or worse, but because we feel it's God's commandment.
Do you think the Myers staying in Levittown will affect property values?
I don't think that the Myers have anything to do with the property decreasing or increasing. I think it's purely a white problem, not a Negro problem.
If you criticize that and our religion, then you're criticizing the Christianity for the last 2,000 years.
In what way?
I think it is the feeling of the majority group which will influence the property, not the minority group.
What happens if they decide to end community control and bring the teachers back? What do you think happens?
Well, the kids gonna walk out.
Those who want an integrated community take their stand based on their own deep feelings of what a community should be.
You're going to go on strike, is that
Yeah, we're going to go on strike, not the teachers anymore. We're going to go on strike.
Do you feel that the Myers will lead to large numbers of other Negroes coming here?
No, I don't think so.
Coleman High School has become a rallying point for Negro campaigners. Comedian Dick Gregory, running as an independent presidential candidate, addressed an enthusiastic school.
I think that there will be probably a normal entrance and not a deluge. I mean, people who want these homes will come here. It's not what people say, this influx. There won't be any such thing. There'll be a normal, I hope.
Doing here affects more than just New York City. And that this historical movement that you're fighting here is bigger than your education. It's bigger than the teachers' attitudes. And I don't know why fools all over the country are scared to admit what is going on here. This is a union problem that the union know once you take over your schools, you're going to take over your engineers, you're going to tell them how many black builders, how many black apprentices, and that's what the real issue is here.
Answer to the problem is eventually when you find that there are no more areas to which a white person can move without having a Negro family in. Well, that would be the best end that there could be to segregation, and it is probably something that will happen in the future.
For the striking teachers, Gregory's visit was only another example of the local school board's black militancy. What started out as a union protest over the sacking of teachers has now become a racial conflict, with teachers accusing Negro leaders of Nazi tactics and black militants labeling Jewish teachers as Middle East murderers.
Some of the people are definitely against integration. And they have told my children that they have to marry niggers.
For the union, nothing less than the removal of the school board will now do. Until that happens, they say their teachers' lives are in danger.
And my child doesn't even know what a nigger is, but from the sound, it has scared them, and they have come home just crying.
Albert Shanker is the teachers' leader.
Why are the teachers on strike putting over 1 million children out of school?
Because in this district, in the city of New York, 19 educators were pushed out of their jobs for political reasons. They were told that they were not to teach anymore because they were out of tune with the political atmosphere in the community.
Mommy, do I have to marry niggers? And my answer in handling all the fears that children come in is that you can marry whomever you wish.
And a judge decided that they were all innocent and all to be returned. But the local governing board refused to take them. And every time the teachers returned, they were put into rooms where the lights were turned out, and they were told by extremists within the group that they were to be killed and carried out in coffins. And we're now just sick and tired of having teachers return to schools where they're threatened and threatened with death. And we originally started with 350 teachers who were involved in this in the district, and now only 79 are returning.
By the way, we both seem to be from below the Mason-Dixon line. Where are you from?
I come from Kentucky.
Had you known any Negroes before you came to Levittown?
My father had a business in an area where there were several colored people. And I can honestly say one of my best friends was a colored girl. And as children have no prejudice, we became very close friends. And in her later years, she has become a registered nurse and trying very hard to raise her children in a clean atmosphere. And we have talked now since we both have been married, and it's such a disadvantage to see her.
And we are demanding that those members of the local governing board and those principals and supervisors who were involved in the threats of violence and who tolerated be removed.
Children try to grow up healthy in the atmosphere that they have to live in.
And then the teachers will return. And this is not just a problem in one district. It's now becoming a citywide problem.
I have found several colored people that I have enjoyed their friendship. I would not let that determine whether I become friend to them by the color of their skin.
Because as we break up this large system into a series of subsystems, there are more and more extremists coming forth in local communities trying to dictate educational policy, trying to push teachers out and principals out and even custodians and school helpers on the basis of, if you don't get out, I'll kill you.
I heard about it.
What was your reaction?
Dynamite. Dynamite.
What have you done about it?
Well, I guess we just discussed it.
How do you feel about the Myers moving in?
Oh, I'm very definitely against it.
And now that we are developing our areas which they gave us, they feel this is a move to separate. But we've already been separated. We look at this as not pushing to get into white areas, but to develop the black areas. And I'm certain in this good country, with the economic drive, whether an area is black, white, or green, white merchants will come into areas where they'll get trade.
Before coming to Levittown, did you have any contact with Negroes?
Well, when I came from a small town where we didn't have any colored people. And at that time I had no feelings either way. But while we were waiting for our house to be built, we lived in Trenton for 9 months. And, well, that was my first contact with them, both in work and going through colored sections to work. And I was very happy I was moving into an all-white community.
It's interesting. They speak of Ocean Hill as being a racist area, but we still have white teachers, and we still have white merchants, the few that are here. And they have not as yet been threatened. We hope that they will never be threatened, and I think the people accept these.
But since they have moved here, they have heard remarks, and, well, I'm afraid that they are going to dislike the idea. There were colored children in the school my son attended last year for the first time, and he often came home and said there had been trouble between them during the day at school.
These parents are not black militants. Most of them are poor and badly educated. But among all of them, there's a desire to get their children out of the ghetto through education.
My boy, he likes sports, and he used to go down there every Saturday with a few of the boys from the neighborhood. And there was an argument that occurred, something real silly. My boy and a colored boy got in an argument. Well, from that time on, for the whole remainder of the summer, the boy was afraid to get down there because the colored boys got a gang together. And every time they would get near my Jimmy, they would beat the devil out of him.
If this community control scheme was stopped now, wouldn't you fear there would be racial rioting, racial tension in the district?
I am never going to make a decision on the basis of whether there's going to be violence.
A major factor is fear. Fear of economic loss, loss of status, fear of violence, and fear of intermarriage. Do you think other Negro families will come to Levittown?
Definitely. Yes.
See, I don't think that we should have prevented integration in the South because the whites threatened violence. I think it's too damn bad if the whites threaten violence down there.
What do you think will happen?
Well, just what's happening already. I don't know. It's a rumor I read in the paper where they have 2 colored school teachers now.
School strike created a large breach between black and white in the city?
I think it has had the effect of separating black from white more than they were separated before. Everyone talks about polarization of passions and people, emotions, and it has had that effect. There's been a lot of ugly literature that's been deliberately spread around, and that That sometimes happens when you get into old-fashioned infighting in big city politics.
I have 2 daughters and 2 sons, and if there's too many colored people around here, I definitely will get out. I'm not thinking much. I don't want her associating with colored people, period.
Well, I'm very definitely against mixed marriages, and that's eventually what it's going to come to. If children are raised together, they're not going to think of anything of marrying together.
Well, I just could not live beside them. I don't feel that they should be oppressed. But I moved here was because it was a white community. And that's the only place I intend to live. If I have to leave Levittown, I will do so.
What was your reaction to the Myers moving in?
Well, I was happy to see this become more of an American community.
There seems to be a large group opposed to the Myers. What would be your attitude toward them?
Well, I would divide. I don't know if there are large groups of people opposed to the Myers. After all, we have some, I don't know, I guess close to 60,000 people in Levittown. Those mobs were never more than 500 or 600. Those who were violently opposed to the Myers moving in were engaging in what they were engaging in.
You don't think, then, that a large majority is against Myers moving in?
Well, that's not true offhand. I know some of the immediate neighbors right here who were for the Myers moving in. The main issue is the right of these people to live like Americans as they choose and to be accepted as good neighbors.
The Myers?
Oh, dozens and dozens of rumors.
What kind?
Oh, that he was being paid by the NAACP, that the Reds were behind it, that the Jews were behind it, that this group and that group was behind it. There were all kinds of rumors. I guess some of them were being spread deliberately, some were just a result of hysteria.
In my business, whoever's got money and has good credit or wants to pay cash can buy a car. It has no discrimination, color, religion, or any type of that sort.
Has the coming of the Myers affected your home life?
Personally, my home life, it hasn't affected nothing whatsoever. But on the neighbors, they have a right, because the average white person living in Levittown has 4 and 5 children. Well, let's put it this way. If the Levittown is migrated in hordes of Negroes, which they have a right to come here, but if something that happens that way, pretty soon my neighbor will be having a Negro son-in-law or a daughter-in-law. How would that look? He had a beautiful home there. The only reason that Mr. Myers came into Levittown is to show people they could get here. It wasn't that he wanted to come to Levittown, but my personal opinion is this. There is something bigger behind this.
Is that your personal opinion only, or is it a fact?
No, I say it's a fact. And I would tell anybody, I mean, barring nobody, I would tell them in a meeting, including the gentleman that is the head of this committee for bringing Mr. Myers here, I'd tell him. I heard about Mr. Montana was having coffee in a restaurant where he worked as a utility man, dishwasher, I don't know. It was supposed to be a part-time job, but I've seen him there 7 in the morning till 9 at night, and then the paper says he was an engineer.
Where did you hear it?
That's where I heard it, from the waitresses in there. They asked me, did you see your new neighbors? And I didn't care to discuss it in public.
What? Property values go up, provided there's no wave of panic selling. And even when there is panic, after the situation is stabilized, prices climb back and frequently go even higher than they were when the initial sale to a Negro was made. Does the integration of Negroes into a white community result in a higher rate of crime, violence, or juvenile delinquency? Not at all. Negroes living in predominantly white communities show a lower incidence of crime than the average for the general population. Is intermarriage the ultimate goal of Negroes in seeking to integrate into previously white communities? The studies show that of all the reasons Negroes have for seeking equality of opportunity, intermarriage is the least. And of all the fears that whites express, this is the greatest. Negroes seek only the right to buy or rent the kind of housing on the open market which they can afford. This basic principle of the free enterprise system, of which we're justly proud, is now denied to them in many communities. The exclusion of Negroes from white communities and their restriction to all Negro neighborhoods fixes negative ideas about them which are carried over from generation to generation. These false notions cause the abandonment by the white population of large areas within our great cities at a tremendous cost to the nation. Advances against discrimination have been made in many fields. A new and much larger Negro middle class has grown up. They have the money to buy their way out of the slums. What happened in Levittown is merely the beginning of what is to follow in communities all over the country during the next few years, as Negroes, like all other Americans, get better education, better jobs, and accumulate more savings.
I don't think you can take a middle of the stand here. Either you're for them or against them.
I've taken a stand for peace and nonviolence and no intimidation of the Myerses.
I don't have any prejudice against colored. It's just that I wouldn't like to have one as a neighbor.
We would act to them as we would act to any other neighbors. We would be friendly towards them and speak to them and visit with them.
I wouldn't care to live in the community where the Negroes would be living.
I think that the majority of people here will accept things and believe, as I believe, that a good neighbor is not one whose color is white or black, just as a good citizen is such.
Mr. Myers and all the Negroes have a right. I'm no better than them. They're as good as I am. But the only reason that Mr. Myers came into Levittown is to show people they could get here.
I just feel that they're within their legal rights to move in here. And if they move in and are law-abiding citizens, I have no complaints.
If more colored are allowed to move in, Levittown is going to go downhill.
I don't think that the Myers have anything to do with the property decreasing or increasing. I think it's purely a white problem, not a Negro problem.
The main issue is the right of these people to live like Americans as they choose and to be accepted as good neighbors.